Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing inside your ex's brain when you walk away. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing inside your ex's brain when you walk away. So if you have gone through a breakup, you are likely experiencing a range of emotions. But how is your ex feeling? In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 points about your ex's mindset if you walk away. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is if you're a dumper. So if you're a dumpee, then please keep listening, because point number 1 could be very helpful for you as well, and I'll also be getting to your perspective very soon. But first of all, we are considering from the position of the dumper and delving into their ex's brain if they walk away, which is of course what would have happened at the time of a breakup. So when someone experiences being dumped, their brain undergoes a series of emotional and physiological responses. Several chemicals are involved in these reactions, and I'll be discussing a few of them right now. So the first chemical that we're going to be discussing is cortisol, and cortisol is often referred to as the stress hormone. Cortisol levels can increase during emotional distress, and breakups are obviously a situation which is likely to trigger stress. This will lead to an elevation of cortisol levels and a more stressful mindset. Now, the second chemical I'm going to be mentioning now is dopamine. And dopamine is associated with the brain's reward system. It's released when we experience pleasure or positive experiences. And during a breakup, the loss of positive interactions and experiences can lead to a decrease in dopamine levels, which will contribute to feelings of sadness and withdrawal. Now, the third chemical I'm going to mention right now is serotonin, and serotonin is linked to mood regulation. A breakup can lead to a decrease in serotonin levels, contributing to feelings of depression, anxiety, and low mood. So we can see if a dumper walks away, which is of course what we're going to do at the time of a breakup, a dumpee's mindset is going to be altered completely by the different levels of chemical. Cortisol is going to go up, dopamine and serotonin is going to go down, and there are many other chemicals involved as well. But this is going to leave a dumpee with a clouded, upset, and almost distraught mindset because everything they knew has now gone. A dumpee will often feel shocked and blindsided by the breakup, and even if a dumper thinks, well, wasn't it obvious? Our relationship wasn't going well. Couldn't they see the signs? For most dumpees, they are shocked. They are blindsided. They didn't see this coming. They never expected their ex-dumper to actually become their ex-dumper. A dumpee's feelings and emotions during this time are going to range through the negative spectrum. Maybe they feel a slight frustration, or it could go to full-blown anger. And mood swings are very commonplace. Maybe a dumpee is really missing their ex one moment due to the fact that there is nothing more attractive than rejection, due to the fact that rejection breeds obsession. But this could develop quite quickly and evolve into the dumpee feeling bitter, anger, and frustrated towards their now ex-dumper. These feelings and emotions will go round and round. The dumpee will be going through the 5 stages of grief, and these stages come, go, and come again. A dumpee's mind will feel like they are in the middle of a tornado, a whirlwind. They don't know whether they're coming or they're going. They don't know what to do for the best. They don't know what advice to listen to. A dumpee's brain has been altered by the changing chemical levels. It's been changed by the fact that the life that they had in front of them now seemingly has gone. A dumpee is going to be shocked, almost horrified about what the future may hold for them, and the fear factor is very, very real. Now, even though a dumpee can and will get through these feelings, it's important for a dumper to know this is the situation your ex-dumpee is likely going through. And that's why I wanted to speak about point number 1 first of all, about what happens if you are the dumper and you walk away after the breakup. Now, if you feel that you needed to do this for the best, you needed to do this for the best. I'm not here to tell you whether you should have ended this or not, but it's so important you realise what your dumpee is likely experiencing. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast, about inside your ex's brain when you walk away. And point number 2 is if you're a dumpee at first. So if you're listening to this now and you're the dumpee, you're probably thinking, well, how can I walk away if my ex-dumper has already walked away? How can I now walk away? Well, if you're a dumpee, you absolutely can walk away. And this is because your ex-dumper has made their decision, they've made their choice, they've moved forward with their life, but you still have a choice to make. Do you chase your ex, or do you move forward on your own path? Okay, because if you decide to move forward on your own path and not chase your ex, then you are in fact walking away. Even if you feel that this isn't the case, you need to be thinking of it in a more logical sense. You have 2 options. You can either chase your ex or you can move forward in a different direction. And if you move forward in a different direction, you are walking away. It's irrespective that the dumper has ended the relationship. So if you're a dumpee, then what happens at first if you do walk away? If you implement my version of the no contact rule? Well, at first, a dumper is going to be relieved. And if you're a dumpee listener, you're probably thinking, well, I don't want them to be relieved. Why are they relieved? Why is this helping me? Well, a dumper is going to be relieved because you have seemingly walked away, and that would suggest that you're not going to be chasing them, harassing them, disrespecting them. When a dumper ends a relationship, they want to go forward on their own route, their own path, their own journey. They don't want their dumpee to be chasing them. And therefore, if you do that, you're going to be frustrating your ex-dumper. You're going to be making them feel frustrated. You're going to be making them feel that they've certainly made the right choice because you are not somebody they want to be around. They're not going to be thinking they want you back. They're going to be thinking, please go away. If you chase your ex-dumper, they're going to move further afield because they're going to believe that you don't listen to them, you don't respect them, you don't understand them. They've asked you to leave them alone. They've ended the relationship and you are still chasing them. That is going to be frustrating. So if you do the opposite, and if you walk away, if you do the opposite, and you implement my version of a no contact rule, if you do the opposite, and you focus on you instead of your ex, then at first, your dumper is going to be relieved. And they're going to be relieved because they're happy that you are respecting them. So although they are relieved, and although you might not think as a dumpee that's a good thing, it absolutely is. Because you need your ex-dumper to feel positive towards you. If you want to try to get your ex back, you can't be doing so if they don't like you. You can't do so if they feel that you're annoying and frustrating and don't respect them. So you need your dumper to be relieved. You need your dumper to be satisfied and happy that you are respecting and listening to them. Because if you chase them and annoy them, that is not going to endear you to them. They're going to be very, very unlikely to want you back if you harass them. So if you're a dumpee and you walk away, at first your dumper will be relieved, but that's not a bad thing for a dumpee. That just showcases the dumper's mindset is thinking of the dumpee in a more positive way. Now, if you want advice and support about how to try to increase the chance of getting your ex back, maybe you want support going through the no contact rule, maybe you want questions answered, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast, about inside your ex's brain when you walk away. And point number 3 is if you're a dumpee later down the line. So we've already said that at first, if you're a dumpee and you walk away, if you do your own thing, if you live your life, if you don't contact your ex, then your ex-dumper is going to be relieved. But what happens later down the line? And when is later down the line? Well, I would suggest, for this instance, we're going to be describing as later down the line as around 6 months later or so. And the reason I say this is because, from my own research, a dumper is most likely to reach out to their dumpee in and around the 6-month mark after no contact has begun. And that also means if a dumpee was to break no contact, then the clock restarts. If you're a month or 2 into no contact and you reach out to your ex, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't get them back. But what it does likely mean is you've reset the clock. You've reset the clock because the dumper is going to be thinking, well, they've reached out to me now. I don't have to worry about them because I know they're always there. And also, that was kind of annoying, really. Maybe I've made the right choice, but not really fully listening to what I hoped for. So, how can we connect this to later down the line? Well, if you maintain my version of a no contact rule for many months, if you move around the 6-month mark, then what you will likely see that the dumper's mindset is going to be changing. Their brain is probably going to start having some of those experiences that we describe the dumpee's brain having at the beginning of today's podcast, because as the dumper moves through their life, they are likely to be going through moments which aren't perfect. They are likely to be second guessing if they've made the right choice, because their life is probably not all sunshine and rainbows as they'd hoped it would be at the time of the breakup. And this is when a dumper is most likely to start self-reflecting. They're most likely to think back to their ex, the dumpee. And if the dumpee has walked away, the dumper is going to start thinking, wondering, and eventually, hopefully for the dumpee, missing them. And this is where the differences take place. At first, when a dumpee walks away, the dumper is unlikely to have that chemical change within their brain. But later down the line, a dumper is much more likely to have those chemical changes within their brain that the dumpee had that we discussed in point number 1. So what we can see here is, as the months tick by, as the dumper comes to a conclusion that their life isn't all that great on their own, and maybe they haven't met anybody better, and maybe they aren't feeling as fulfilled as they hoped, this is when the dumper can start to reflect and maybe regret their decision. But they can only do so if the dumpee isn't in their life. You can't miss somebody who is always in your life. You can't miss somebody who is continually texting you, calling you, knocking on your door. And that's why I always say to dumpees, to increase your chance of success, I highly suggest you implement my version of a no contact rule, because you need your ex to feel your absence. You need your dumper to miss you. You need those chemicals to change around in their mind, and that's only going to happen if you're not in their story. Yes, later down the line, you could both have starring roles in each other's life story, but right now, you are apart, and you can't keep popping up in a cameo role chapter after chapter. You need to have a complete blank for many chapters for your ex-dumper to potentially start missing you. Now, of course, it's important to say that there is no 100% guaranteed way to get your ex back. Nothing works 100% of the time, and nothing fails 100% of the time. I can't promise you that if you implement my version of a no contact rule that you'll get your ex back. And I can't promise you that if you don't implement my version of a no contact rule that you won't get them back, okay? Because at the end of the day, every situation is going to play out somewhat differently. But what I can say is that from my research, people who implement my version of a no contact rule significantly increase their chance of success by developing that gap, by developing that absence, by developing that mindset shift and enabling the dumper to get to a stage where they begin to miss their dumpee and have those chemical changes in their brain. Without the chemical changes, you're unlikely to have a situation where a dumper is going to want to reach out to their dumpee. They need to be feeling a longing for those moments that the dumpee shared with them. The dumper will think back and recollect to those more positive times, and that is a situation where if they're not getting those dopamine hits right now, they are going to be really feeling that they miss their ex-dumpee, because they'll be thinking back to those moments and missing those opportunities. Serotonin levels are likely to drop as well in the dumper's mind, and that can bring in the anxiety and the low mood. And with the cortisol levels likely rising in the dumper's mind, this is going to enable the stress hormone to get to the stage where they feel like they've got no choice but to reach out to you. And whereas you as a dumpee are listening to today's podcast, dumpers are much less likely to seek help. I can say that most of my audio coaching clients are dumpees. Not all of them, but most of them. Most of the people who listen to my podcasts are dumpees. Not all of them, but most of them. And this showcases that dumpees are more likely to seek out support. So when a dumper goes through this brain change regarding the chemicals, they're unlikely to be fully understanding what's going on. They're unlikely to be seeking support. They're unlikely to be persuaded not to reach out to their dumpee, whereas I'm persuading you as a dumpee not to reach out to your dumper. So when we consider all of this, we can see why a dumper could get to a stage where they reach out to their dumpee, and if that happens, a reconnection is possible. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.